what are some of the other groups in that time of Judaism? Like, for example, zealots or disciples, like rabbis use all the time, right? Like, what's going on with some of these other groups that's kind of mended into the normalcy of their life, their context?
Yeah, so a rabbi would be kind of to equate it to our context, it'd be your pastor of a church, right? That's kind of your lead person in a synagogue. Each rabbi would have a set of disciples, and that's where that word comes from. Is one teacher has a set of students, and those students come to that teacher weekly, or even more often than that, to learn from him and for him to teach them.
Almost like an apprenticeship, maybe.
A little bit, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So, yeah, and it wasn't like formal education today where you go to classes or whatever. You really lived with that person.
Interesting.
So in the way that we see the Gospels played out, Jesus was the rabbi, and the 12 disciples were his disciples.
And that was that was a relatively common thing then. This
Correct.
wasn't some revolutionary thing.
It wasn't revolutionary. It wasn't maybe common, but it was definitely recognized as being, you're a disciple of Jesus. So,
and they knew it's like, oh, you're an apprentice of this teacher, that teacher.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's, when we think about the 12 apostles, they were called into this, Jesus knowing what he was calling them into, and they were getting called to apprentice with the Messiah.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's right. It's a high calling.
So,
and the Zealots, I don't know.
That's the last one we have listed here, the Zealots.
Well, I think it's interesting. We've mentioned in another podcast, but one of the 12 disciples was a zealot. And zealots were, they were of a political nature. And during this time, of course, we mentioned how Rome is oppressing Israel. And there was a group of Jews who came to feel very upset about that and wanted to stop that and reverse it. So they actually just trained themselves. They became very military, and they really learned how to use different weapons, and they learned how to assassinate people. I mean, they became really incredible warriors. And their whole purpose was to overthrow the Roman government so that they could become ruling over Israel again. So, and one of them was Simon the Zealot, who was one of the disciples
and
of Jesus.
Called this person to be an apostle. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Jewish leaders, we have different religious leaders and some structure there. Then we have this relatively understood system for rabbi, apprentice, disciple. And then we have these zealots that we see throughout the gospel accounts, who are the zealots, maybe not throughout the gospel accounts, but we see one become a disciple.
Yeah.
So it's helpful to know what the heck that even means. It's not just a dude who was super passionate about all
zealot
things.
for a
Like,
reason.
So Jewish customs.
Okay.
This is another thing we see, and I feel like it's something that it's hard for us to kind of wrap our mind around if you're a normal Westerner, because so many other cultures, I think, can relate to this probably better than we can, with these drawn out cultural customs. For us, like, we see family on holidays typically, right?
For a day.
Like it's not regular that we spend all day, every day with, 4 generations of our family and their cousins, right? So what's going on with some of these Jewish customs, their daily life, like some of these different events that they have routinely always going on? Talk to us about that. What are some Jewish customs that we see coming up throughout the gospel accounts?
I wonder if it might be helpful to talk about family structure a little bit and how families were put together, because you've made that point we exist in kind of a nuclear family system where it's mom, dad, and the kids, and we move away from our parents or our grandparents.
Another nucleus.
And so we start these nuclei.
Yeah.
Whereas in their culture, it was much more communal and much more, granddad, grandma, cousins, aunts and
All
uncles,
live in a compound.
all lived in some place very close or in the same house.
Yeah.
So that gave rise to the kind of celebrations. You can imagine 20 or 30 people getting together to celebrate something that lived together. You sort of do it more elaborately.
Right.
And so, their customs. I mean, we read about the wedding at Cana in John 3, I guess it is, or 4. And then, that went on for a week, and they had all these events go on. And the Sabbath was a very important part of Jewish life. It gave it rhythm. It gave it, a rhythm that they followed throughout their week. And so they knew the Sabbath was coming. They'd prepare for it on Friday evening. And during the Sabbath, you had certain laws about the way you.
So what is the Sabbath? Is it just like basically a Sunday where you sit around on the couch eating potato chips, watching football?
No. They didn't
What
have
is
TV?
They didn't have football either.
Yeah.
No, the Sabbath was instituted, funny enough, at creation. The seventh day of creation, God used 6 days to create the world, the heavens, the earth, everything in it. On the last day, he rested. And that was not because God was tired and he needed a nap. It was because God wanted to set the pattern of how we were to interact with the world. So in the Jewish tradition, the Sabbath was that seventh day of the week, where it was set aside for rest and meditation.
Yeah. And then we see it again in the 10 Commandments,
right?
As out of all the rules that God could have given, and those 10,
remember the Sabbath, keep it holy.
Yeah. Right? One of them was remember the 10. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. So by the time we get to the gospel accounts, a few thousand years pass, laws get made, rules get made, traditions are established. And you're about to start getting into, I think, some of what goes into the Sabbath. We might not need to exhaust it, but what is the Sabbath day for a Jew at this time, especially?
It was set aside. It was meant to be a day where you didn't do your normal stuff. You didn't do work. And they defined work very heavily. They had very incredible rules for how far you could walk or what things you could lift. These laws exist today for a Jew that is trying to follow these laws. So this actually became a burden for the people to figure out all these laws and how to follow them.
And then the logistics of how to prepare for them. If you can't do them work,
exactly. How do you do a eating?
Right, and you got 30 people coming over for lunch after temple. I got to make all that food today.
Exactly, and make sure it's still in good shape because they didn't have refrigeration.
Yeah.
So
it was a big day. There was a lot of preparation for it.
Yes.
And then on that day, there was a lot of ritual that went about that day. Everything from what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to not do.
Correct.
And how you're supposed to do each one of those things.
Yeah.
Yes. And their day, also the Jewish day started in the evening, at sundown, and went to sundown. So sunrise didn't have anything to do with the day. It was the sundown. So that's Friday evening through Saturday evening.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So other things going on in their customs and daily life. What are some of the other traditions that we might see throughout the New Testament?
I think one of the more important ones that we see, especially in the life of Jesus and in the Gospels, is the Passover. So the Passover was when the Jews were in Egypt during the Exodus, or before the Exodus. The last plague that God put on Egypt through Moses was the ending of the firstborn. So he took the firstborn of every family except for those Jewish families who sacrificed the lamb and put the blood of the lamb over their doorposts. So when the angel of death, I think is what they called it, passed through and the angel would pass over those places with the blood over the door. That's where the Passover comes from. In the context of Jesus, the Passover was a feast that was observed every year at the temple and in Jerusalem, where they would celebrate the exodus from Egypt, them escaping Egypt and becoming their own people. We see, I think, at least 3 Passovers happen during the time of Jesus, during his ministry.
One of the fascinating things about the celebration of the Passover, it wasn't a temple-based celebration, actually. It was a home-based.
Yeah.
You did it in your individual home, and you always had a mama and a papa that ran the ran the celebration. Whereas the other ones were all done at the temple or in larger groups.
So there's 2 things we just touched on there: temple gatherings and at-home religious celebrations and feasts that are happening in the community. And so for our listeners, we have this space, this culture where there's these religious leaders enforcing these different traditions. There's these different feasts happening in your community and in your home, temple gatherings on a regular routine basis. No matter where you're listening and watching the Red Letter Basics podcast, you can support the growth and reach of this ministry. Drop a like, share with a friend, and leave a comment or a review to help the growth of this ministry. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can go over to the website, redletterbasics.com, and learn how to become a ministry partner.